Welcome to another episode of Comedy Wham Presents with me, your host Valerie, and sometime kitty co-hosts Miss Purrington and Mookie. ComedyWham.com is your place to go for features about all Austin comedy. In addition to podcasts, Comedy Wham brings you articles, album reviews, our advice column, all of my Austin Chronicle articles about the Austin comedy scene, and check out our listing of festivals from across the country and the world. And our FPIA contest page is wrapped up with the 2024 contest having concluded last month. Our most popular feature is our events page for live comedy shows in Austin, Houston, and DFW, where 100% of the entries you see come from comics and producers. Click the Submit a Show button from the top of the homepage or events page to fill out the survey to get your show listed. It's free and easy. Tag us on your Instagram stories and we'll share your show promo to our Instagram followers. And we also offer paid promo boosts on Instagram. Want to support these resources that we provide? You can donate to Comedy Wham on PayPal, Venmo, or even Patreon. Click the Support CW icon on our homepage to see the ways that you can help us. Our podcast was launched in 2016 to bring you funny people and their stories. As a fan, I like to delve into a comic's background and motivations and will usually take a detour along the way. Consider the interview a way for you to get to know the folks that make the comedy scene. I'm so used to saying the Austin comedy scene, but not this time, not today, that make the comedy scene as fascinating off stage as it is on stage. If you like this podcast, please rate and review us. Today, we're talking to somebody who has a lot of debuts to his name. Fairview is his debut film, which won 19 awards across an impressive 32 film festivals. And it's inspired by his campaign for and accidental victory as Harvard Student Council president. While we did our little small scale online comedy shows during the pandemic to help Austin comics, our guest did online variety shows that raised over $140,000 for organizations like the NAACP Legal Defense and Educational Fund and Feeding America. Here comes another debut, his debut musical, Herschel and the Hanukkah Goblins, an unauthorized parody musical, was reviewed by Broadway World as hilarious and irreverent. He's been on Amazon's Laugh After Dark, and as if that wasn't enough, casually, he's just a third-degree black belt in Taekwondo. And then here we come with the next debut. His debut comedy special, Built for Math, is out now. You can watch it. I've watched it at least 3 times now. I'm so excited to get to talk to our guests. Finally, we've had some scheduling back and forth, but finally, Comedy Wham presents our guest, Sam Clark.
We did it!
Thank
you so much for having me, Valerie.
Yes.
Great introduction. I love that.
Thank you.
Yes, thanks for having me. I'm so excited.
Yeah, and I see you're representing your Britney shirt.
Yes, absolutely have to.
From
in the comedy special, this was the Britney t-shirt that was under the Britney sweater. So I had my 2 layers of Britney to really to buoy me during the taping.
That's amazing. Wouldn't have pegged you for a hardcore Britney fan, but she's got a story, man.
From early on, yes, truly, what a tale.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Well, let me start with my official icebreaker question for you, Sam. Ooh. One word to describe your past.
Ooh, one word to describe my past. Ooh, that's fun. Energetic, I think. Yeah, I think energetic. I had a lot of energy as a child, as the built for math child who is the album cover for the special. Much energy, which at that time got me in a lot of trouble. But then later on was able to channel it, first through comedy and then also through some like film and writing stuff. Yeah, I think energetic would I think my mom would agree with that. My past teachers would agree with that. And my current comedy peers would also probably agree with that.
Yeah. The irony that your album is called Built for Math, and when we were first looking at scheduling, I said, "Oh my God, I'm a mathematician,"
right.
And I hadn't listened to the special yet. So in my mind, I'm like, "Oh my God, is he going to talk formulas and calculus?"
Right,
I'm
another mathematician.
But you're not. So
I am not. No. Yeah, the origin of the name, I was pretty good at math in high school, and then once I got to college, I didn't enjoy math in high school, even though I was decent at it.
Yeah.
So in college, I managed to do the bare minimum distribution requirement for math. But built for math, the origin of the name was from, and you'll hear in the comedy special, was from when, as you mentioned, I've done Taekwondo for a while, and when
Uh-huh.
I first showed up to a Taekwondo studio when I was 10 years old, I had glasses and I had that like strap in the back to hold them on, glued to my face.
Uh-huh.
I have my built for math sticker here that shows that infamous first grade picture. Um, but my taekwondo instructor, the first person I met in the martial arts world, absolutely wonderful person. Her name's Teresa Byrne, and she's been like a second mom to me throughout my life. She initially described me as built for math when I when I arrived in the martial arts studio, which, as I say in the special, is like a hilarious roast, frankly, to say that a child is
Yeah.
built for math. Um, and I think like it was very indicative of like it seems like an appalling thing to tell a 10-year-old who's just trying to do martial arts for the
Uh-huh.
first time, but she also was, in terms of me being described as energetic, she was someone who really like encouraged that rather than trying to dampen it down
Yeah.
when I first stepped out on the floor there. Yeah, but perhaps a bit of a misnomer in terms of the fact that I would not describe myself as a mathematician.
Yeah, yeah. And I do love that part of your comedy special when you convey, the glasses. So I don't want us to spoil anything. I definitely want
Sure.
people to go check out the special, but it's one of the funniest moments, visual moments that
Right, yeah.
I've seen someone perform on stage. So
Good.
well,
Yeah,
let
expressing just how much energy there was in that little first grader. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Well, let's go back in time in the Wayback Machine. You've already mentioned how you were always a very energetic child. What role did comedy and humor have in your life growing up?
Ooh, that's a good question. I mean, the well, one thing that felt very special about the comedy special was where we taped it.
Hmm.
And that was kind of where a lot of it began because I taped it at the full long-winded title was the Wolf Theater Academy at the Mizell Arts and Cultural Center at the Denver Jewish Community Center.
Rolls off the
That is,
tongue.
yeah, rolls off the tongue. Yes, exactly. But yeah, the stage that I was on in that kind of recently renovated theater, beautiful theater, 400 seater. That is where I started like performing, and I
Mm.
they had really cool, honestly, like kind of kids summer stock theater sort of thing. So basically, every single summer, except for one ill-fated summer when my parents sent me to sports camp, and then they never did that again. I would I would go to the Denver JCC and do like all these plays. And like when I started, they had these like basically 1 week long little plays for like starting in like first graders. And we would do like a 1 hour long rewritten performance of like Charlie and the Chocolate Factory or like Harry Potter 4 or whatever. And the like the executive artistic director of the place, a wonderful guy named Steve Wilson, he would just rewrite all of these, be they like novels like Lord of the Rings or Harry Potter or like Charlie and the Chocolate Factory or like a 1 hour long version of A Midsummer Night's Dream, like whatever it was, it would be just these like tight shows that all these energetic little Jewish kids, not exclusively Jewish kids, it was the JCC, but open to everyone, um, could do. And I just like that is what got me hooked. I had like a lot of energy as a little kid that did sometimes get me in trouble. But then I think when my parents realized like maybe this kid is a theater kid,
Hmm.
they put me in those shows and I got absolutely hooked on just being on stage in front of people, making them laugh. And then kept doing shows and started doing improv in like middle school and high school. And then through college started kind of branching out into like what other types of comedy can I create,
Hmm.
in terms of like on the kind of video side of things or on kind of large scale, almost like prank type things, I suppose. And then after graduating college, moved to LA and was like, time to start properly doing stand up, and got hooked on that as well.
Okay, so stand up was actually a later art form for you
Yeah, it was
after.
in definitely like in college and in high school, or especially in college. I feel like I became kind of a go-to person to like MC various events, which like was, I suppose, technically stand up, but I wasn't like
Sure.
writing a 5 or 10 or
Hmm.
15-minute set like about my own life and about my own stories and experiences. So
Yeah.
it was much more like, all right, the the hip hop dance team wants someone to like cover up the costume changes and tell some jokes in between and introduce the whole thing.
Mhm.
And I was like, I'll do that kind of thing. And then also got involved with a lot of again, like theatrical productions, drag musicals, that kind of thing. But then once I got to LA, I moved to LA mostly with the intention of like TV writing, and I've been lucky enough to write on a number of shows. But I was when I got to LA, I was very much itching for like I know I want to perform again. What form should that take?
Mhm.
Um, Very first open mic was at Flappers Comedy Club in Burbank, California. And then I was like, oh, I think stand up is kind of the new avenue for this, among
Fun.
other things. Yeah,
Yeah.
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 And it got very much, I feel like, brought me back to those first times at the JCC, which is part of why it felt so special to do the comedy special on the same stage where I once played where I once played General Genghis Khan Schmitz in Seussical the Musical, right? Or I played Gollum in a stage production of The Hobbit on that very
Okay.
stage, and I was like, all right, let's do a comedy show here. Yeah.
That's that's awesome. You mentioned getting into a little bit of prank culture, if
Yes.
you will, and I do want to talk about Fairview and how that came about. And you were
Yeah.
in I've now put the pieces together, deductive reasoning and all being, a mathematician's
Indeed.
strongest suit
Important.
is you went to Harvard
I did. Yes.
and you accidentally landed as the president of the student council.
Yeah,
Uh,
I was president of student council for about 5 minutes before my proper resignation. And the origin of that is my best friend on the planet, who was my roommate at the time, Gus Myopoulos. He and I decided that we were like, you know what? People take student council very, very seriously here at Harvard. The undergraduate council, it was their official name for it. And we were like, what if we as a duo ran for undergraduate council president and vice president, completely as a joke. And
uh-huh.
so our joke campaign, our slogan was Sam and Gus for UC president and VP, colon, you could do worse. Um, which we thought was demonstrably true.
Yeah, yeah.
Like you could do worse. And then like our other platforms were like, one of our platforms was just thicker toilet paper for all. Because dorm toilet paper famously not even single ply. I feel like almost half ply. And another platform was tomato basil ravioli soup every day. It was just like that was our favorite soup in the dining hall, and we were
Uh-huh.
like, hey, we want this every day. And what we realized honestly is that like a lot of our opponents, who many of whom became good friends, their platforms were very much kind of a classic sort of stronger together or change ahead or moving forward sort of thing. And we were like, no, no, thicker toilet paper, the soup that we like. Let's have that soup every day.
Yeah.
And then we had some other, I think we had another slogan of sorts that was just kind of mashing together all of the different student referenda into one. Like I think it was like divest from gender neutral weekend shuttles, which combined like a referendum about divestment, a referendum about like gender neutral bathrooms, and a referendum about like more shuttles between different parts of campus on the weekends. And we were like, why not all of it?
Yeah.
All of that together, mash it together. And yeah, it was so fun. And I'd like our approach that we took to it. First of all, one of our dear mutual friends who you've also had on the podcast, Sierra Cato, brilliantly talented comedian, but also very much, I think, like the ultimate multi-hyphenate in that in addition to comedy, she's a web designer and she's a great
Mhm.
graphic designer. So basically we got the benefit of me and Gus both being, unlike the rest of the folks running for president and vice president who were very much involved in like kind of student government, politics, pre-law societies, that kind of thing. We were very much embedded in the art scene. So Sierra was our poster designer.
Mm.
And we got a friend, Madeline, who was a great photographer. So basically, like our main approach at the beginning of the campaign was like, let's have the best looking posters and let's spend our entire campaign funds on just printing as many of these posters as humanly possible
Wow.
with our silly ridiculous slogans, and so always within the parameters of the very specific rules they gave about when you could poster and where you could poster and how much money you could spend on postering. Just the very first day of the campaign, we covered the entire campus in these posters. um, and the goal being like every time you pass a poster it should make you laugh a little bit with those silly little slogans and jokes that we had. Yeah, with the slogans that I mentioned were some of them. There was another one where that Sierra designed where it was just like all of these different graphics on the poster, a lot of different sort of like a bald eagle and the Statue of Liberty, like all of these different sort of imageries, and then just the text at the bottom was just parentheses, Sam, don't forget to put a caption here. And so like that was just in front of everyone's lecture hall and everything. Um, yeah, and like ultimately what we found is that like we made waves in that I think people recognized the fact that like no one knew what student council actually did. They were
Yeah.
like, I don't know, it's like the kid in your class who's always like uh asking a question in the form of just demonstrating how much he knows about a certain topic. Like
Mhm.
everyone's like, oh, that's who's involved in undergraduate council, and I don't really know if it affects me. So people, I think we started to make waves in terms of people laughing about it, and then I think the big turning point was when during the debate, first of all, we packed the house with all of our friends and fans who were stoked about it. And I think what they didn't expect is that we're pretty good debaters also.
Mm.
So we very passionately defended our various positions about thicker toilet paper and tomato basil ravioli soup and how those are frankly more concrete visions than whatever the hell the other folks were saying.
Yeah.
And then also like there were moments when we would talk about things we would want to do if we were elected, and the moderators would kind of raise their hand and be like, oh, actually that's not within the purview of undergraduate council. And we would be like, well, that's exactly the problem, is that we're running for president and we don't know what the hell this organization does. So I think that
Wow.
was sort of the turning point where people were like, oh, this is like, yes, this is a silly, stupid joke, but also like they are kind of saying something to the extent of like, this is a body within the university that has a pretty good chunk of funding. And frankly, the best thing that they do is they distribute funding to other student clubs. But there's a lack of understanding and communication about like what the hell they actually do. We're
Mhm.
running and we don't know what the hell they actually do. And I
Yeah.
think that's where it sort of started to resonate with people. And people were like, you know what? I don't know what the hell this organization does, but I will use my vote to vote for these guys who made me laugh, and let's see what
Uh-huh.
happens.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and then we got elected. I was involved in a lot of other kind of theater and comedy things and whatnot. So I was like, if I get elected, I don't have time to do any of it. But my dear friend Gus was like, you know what? I actually have time. So when I resigned, he then actually became the president.
Oh.
And he was frankly super effective because he very limited power for president of student council, but one of the powers was that he could mail merge the entire student body. So he just sent out weekly emails that were packed full of jokes about like, hey, here's some resources that your clubs can use, or hey, here's an event coming up. Um, and he ended up being pretty damn effective.
Huh. That's very cool.
Yeah.
Did you know before that you were going to make a movie? out of the
Ooh,
experience?
no, but what that came out of is that after graduating, both Gus and I stayed as, and we continue to be like writing partners. At the beginning of this, you mentioned this musical Herschel and the Hanukkah Goblins, an unauthorized parody musical. He and I
Mhm.
wrote that together last
Hmm.
year, along with our very brilliant composer songwriter friend Dylan Markarell. Um, but what that kind of came out of is that like we were, in this post grad world where we were both doing a lot of tutoring, figuring out like what on earth, how on earth do we be adults?
Uh-huh.
The perennial struggle that we're all still trying to figure
You
out.
mean college and one of the nicest colleges in the country didn't prepare you for that
Not
question?
not super well. It really I loved so many aspects of my college experience, but a lot of, especially towards the end, they were like, "Hey, do you want to become a consultant or go into finance?"
Oh.
And if the answer, yeah, if the answer was yes, then you would make six figures and be super miserable. But we were like, we don't want to do that. So what do we want to do with our life,
Uh-huh.
kind of thing. And Gus and I wrote quite a few scripts together. Like we sold one of those scripts. A lot of the other scripts are just are living in Google Doc purgatory somewhere, right? But like we were writing a lot of things together, but we were also like, we want something about that campaign was like very exciting to us, and we felt like, oh, this taps into exactly the kind of comedy that we're excited about. And in terms of it being not just a script, but kind of there were so many fun elements at play in terms of like building a
Mhm.
sort of joke or satirical campaign. And our initial thought was like, all right, well, what's the next logical step? What's the next level? And we're like, I guess city council. Um, so we were toying around with this idea a lot. We ended up we put together kind of a pitch deck and some scripts for the notion of like, what if there was a couple guys running for city council, a candidate and a campaign manager, and their entire platform was that they didn't have a platform, and
Uh-huh.
that they were kind of the ultimate political panderers. And like, what if we just build our entire platform from verbatim quotes that we steal from people in focus groups or during canvassing, block walking, etc. Um, and we learned many lessons along the way as we wrote that, because we wrote that quite a few years ago before we did the film, and we had partnered with a production company, and we were very naive and 23 years old in terms of being like, all right, this production company wants to film a proof of concept for it, and then we can pitch the proof of concept, yada yada yada. And then like at the end of the day, they kind of dragged that along for 3 years, and we kept thinking like, surely they're doing something with it.
Yeah.
And also we're 23 and we don't want to be too annoying on emails, but we like that weird kind of
Yeah.
showbiz balance. And in the meantime, we had as a pair filmed a lot of things like for education companies. We took a crack at doing like a documentary, and so we had kind of built out our own just production chops. And we were like, at the end of the day, we were like, what if we just film this ourselves? um
Hmm.
and so the initial idea was like to shoot it as like a pilot proof of concept, basically. And so we went back to my childhood home in Denver. We crashed there, and what was exciting about, I think, doing it where we did it in Colorado was the notion of, I mean, less true recently. It's tended more blue, but like Colorado for a long time was very kind of purple state, if you will. Like there's very, very, very entrenched both left and right wing political pockets in
Hmm.
Colorado, and we were like, okay, well, what if we film it all here? And our notion of filming with real people is we have a fictional campaign team in terms of the two of us and a couple interns, but then we film real focus groups, like a real left-wing focus group and a real right-wing focus group, film those completely documentary style. And then at
Uh-huh.
the end of this sort of episode turned film is our sort of idiot campaign team trying to trying so hard to please everybody. And so to use words borrowed from this focus group and
Uh-huh.
this focus group into a slogan that can make everyone happy. And obviously, if you see the film, that it doesn't work out great. But we were like, let's just do it. And then I think by the time we were done with it, we were like, this is might as well submit this to festivals. We managed to the budget that we had kind of raised for the film. We had a bunch of money set aside for like locations and equipment rentals, but we managed to get our campaign headquarters for free and borrow cameras for free. So we basically all of that budget that we
Wow.
thought we were going to have to use to shoot it, we're like, let's just funnel all that to festival submission fees, which can really stack up.
Yeah.
Um, and then we sent it out to festivals and it did pretty darn well.
Yeah, I mean 19 awards and 32 festivals. I mean, the little that I know about the film festival
Right.
world, that is pretty impressive.
Yeah, we're very pleased about it.
Yeah, yeah. So you've mentioned that you continue to work with Gus and that you've
Hmm.
done other production work. I might be manifesting here, but am I talking to a future comedy film uh producer
I would love
and
that. We
writer?
actually, as a matter of fact, I saw Gus a mere a couple weeks ago when we
Hmm,
started to kind of plot like what's the next version of
that's
this.
cool.
The vision coming up is here actually behind me is the poster. There
Yeah,
is me, and there
slogan
is our
TBD.
you see in the first 2 minutes of the pilot or of the film that Gus, the campaign manager, yeah, our very creatively named characters were Sam and Gus, and
Yeah.
we are like, let's just play shittier versions of ourselves. like I'm like, I will be just like turn the dial of my ego this much up. And Gus was like, let me turn the dial of my just kind of neuroses and anxiety this much up. Me as the candidate, him as the campaign manager.
Uh-huh.
And like part of the opening scene is me really excitedly arriving to campaign headquarters where my campaign manager, Gus, has a surprise for me. And the surprise is that he's printed a massive banner, an 8 foot long banner that says Sam Clark for city council, slogan TBD, which of course was not what was intended. And I throw a computer and it's, and then
Yeah.
credits roll. But that is all to say, the vision coming up, and what a great way to manifest it right here on Comedy Wham,
Uh-huh.
is a goal I think in the coming year. Is we were like, what if that is kind of our sort of our banner, essentially production company. I think we're working towards is slogan TBD
Ah,
Productions, and like what kind of thinking about we still I think want to at some point pitch kind of Fairview the show with the the festival circuit short film as the proof of concept, but also
yeah.
like what are other different this was local politics, but what are other sort of interesting subcultures, communities, etc., where we could film kind of a mockumentary type low
Hmm.
budget film with that same sort of Nathan For You, Ollie G show inspired twist of like, hey, we're going to be shooting some of this with real people.
Yeah,
I've
yeah.
I've used that we've used that term a lot in describing it. Like we filmed this with real people, which I think is always funny because it does kind of imply that actors are just not real
Not
people,
real, yeah.
which like yeah, fair enough. We have many veneers on veneers of how we present,
That's
right?
true. That's
But
true.
but yeah, the idea of like, all right, what are other things that we can maybe film in, yeah, doing kind of a documentary style
Hmm.
involving real people and their real input on sort of how their world functions and building characters that fit into those and see kind of what hijinks ensue.
Yeah,
So stay
exciting.
tuned on that, I
Yeah,
suppose.
yeah, exciting. Okay, so let's spend some more time with the stand-up part of Sam
Yes.
Clark. And you said you got your official stand-up start in LA. And
Yeah.
how have you enjoyed the stand-up as it either complements or lifts up or maybe distracts from your
Sure.
other creative endeavors?
Ooh, that's a great question. I mean, like I said earlier, I think there what really drew me to stand up in terms of like, especially post college, there's so many disparate directions that you feel like you can go in, like comedy wise, entertainment industry
Hmm.
wise. And what really brought me to stand up was the kind of the itch to perform. And that's what brought me there initially. And then it was also like, oh, I can write and create things that are and talk about things that are a lot more personal, talking about my childhood, my upbringing, my family. And I think like that really became the outlet to be like, there are, can I write a pilot script about this sort of thing, about my, relationship with my dad while she transitioned, that kind of thing. I'm like,
Mhm.
yes, for sure. But there's something so direct and satisfying and like very sort of palpable and tangible for people, I think, in terms of like just delivering it directly to the audience as jokes and stories.
Mhm.
And I think, yeah, it was really something where I kind of caught the bug for it. I'm like, I want to keep doing this, see kind of where it goes, and what I can do. And also like there is something that I just really love about, hard to phrase it as the comedy community, because there are just, so as you certainly know, in Austin and with everyone
Yeah,
you've interviewed, there's just so many different comedy communities and
yeah,
pockets of people and whatnot. But that's something I've really loved, is just like being able to connect with comedians and do shows with them, and then who knows what else you do with them, kind of thing. Is
right.
I think that's where it's really complemented in terms of there's so many dear comedian friends who I'm like, right now I do sporadic shows with you, or I go to your shows, you go to my shows, we meet at an
Mhm.
open mic, whatever. But like, who knows what else we can end up working on as we're all sort of in this wild industry, trying to
Yeah,
just
yeah,
create things to put out there, and to get in front of audiences, and to make things that we feel are funny and have a purpose, I guess. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I've been watching Flight of the Conchords, and
Oh, love
it's
Flight of the
it's
Concords.
so good. It's just hilarious how the cameos of comics that were part of that show that now are like household names. It's
Right,
just
right,
like, you speaking to that point, you just never know where those connections will
right,
eventually lead
100%.
you to. Yeah.
And it's just so it's there's, I feel like there's nothing better than being able to just make something with your comedy friends, to be
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
hey, and to shoulder tap someone who you saw at a show and be like, hey, do you want to be in this little sketch,
Uh-huh.
or vice versa, or like, do you want to kind of have a little writing session, do you want to, frankly, hold each other a little accountable to like to going to shows, to
Yeah,
writing the drafts and that kind of thing. And yeah, you never know where that's going to go. And there's just so many brilliantly talented comedians out there, who so many of them would deeply deserve any sort of big break or whatever. And you never know when that'll hit. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I want to hit on something, and this is going to turn a little bit into a really big philosophical observation
Mm,
about success in stand-up comedy.
yeah.
Um, there's a concept about being true to yourself in stand-up comedy, and to me, one of the ways that I saw that come out for you is the way that you talk about dad
Hmm.
who transitioned as a
Yeah.
trans woman, and it is so um palpable how, that's obviously a very personal thing, so it is
Right.
easy for you to talk about dad. uh and I'm like trying to be super super careful here because I'm
Sure,
afraid
sure.
of getting myself tongue tied,
Right,
because
right.
like you address in the special, dad, people have, a connotation of what that
Right. You
means.
immediately think dad, he, of course.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
But because it is so personal to you and therefore so truthful,
Mm,
it comes out naturally. The audience, can take in your message and your comedy around that
hmm.
kind of clash of the expectation.
Right.
And it's the bigger philosophical thing is you know comedy is most effective when it is truthful to you,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
don't try to, because as you have no doubt heard, Austin, like you kind of alluded to, we have these different pockets of comedy
Totally.
communities here. And,
Yeah.
there are people that are willing to punch down to the transgender
Totally. Totally.
community
Yeah.
here. And, somebody who is trying to do that would do just terrible, terrible things if
Right.
they tried
Right.
to do what you did,
Mm-hmm.
whereas what you have done is coming from truth and love.
Right.
And So that's my
Yeah, I think like
soapbox.
no, totally, absolutely. I think it like coming from Truth and Love is super real in terms of the like a lot of the bits about where I'm talking about my dad and talking about the fact that like, she is my dad
Hmm.
and that she um it has come from just so many conversations that she and I had because when she first came out to me when I was like back from winter break my freshman year of college
Oh,
and it
wow.
was like and then that following summer, that following several summers, it was just like the two of us, just she and her living back in my childhood home. I was working a couple summer jobs and she was figuring out like what the hell it means for her to be a trans woman kind of thing. And so we had
Hmm.
so many conversations about that. And a lot of that, the initial core of it and kind of how I open up that part of the comedy special or that part of whenever I'm doing a set about her is really rooted in some of the conversations that we had where she was like, something that she was initially grappling with was she was like, I am, first of all, I am she now. I'm not he as I have lived for so much of my life, for
Hmm.
most of my life. Um, but like I still feel like I am you and your sister's dad. Like
Hmm.
I am dad and I don't want to stop being dad just because I'm Rachel now and just
Uh,
because like I'm presenting myself and living as my authentic self so differently. And so that was something that me and my dad and my sister were kind of like figuring out for a while is the like yeah, what do we call each other, how do we navigate that differently, and kind of what that came down to. And it's I love that series of jokes about the notion of like she's my dad and that's confusing.
yeah.
And I'm very proud of those jokes, a because they almost, I'm not going to say always because it's never always, but they almost always get good laughs. um and like those are actually like her favorite jokes. She loves those jokes,
Oh.
and she was at the taping.
Uh-huh.
And she said she was like in the lobby after the taping, like I felt like a celebrity because
Oh.
because she was like I was the trans dad that was being talked about on stage in front of this big crowd, and she was like I felt like I was almost like holding court a little while I was
Yeah.
waiting for you to return from the green room and whatnot. Um, but yeah, I think like that's and that's what to your point of like I think especially like well-intentioned folks who don't want to punch down and who want to like understand this experience more but also do want to be able to laugh about it because that was also like part of my dad's point. She's like transitioning in many ways has been hilarious. Like
Mm.
there's just so many mishaps. It's kind of, it's a second adolescence in many ways. It's a lot of like figuring out like what, like it's like you're 14 again in some ways, being like what is my new being and my appearance and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But I think people like to feel sort of safe in laughing about it where they're like, oh, these jokes are coming because these jokes are coming from a well-intentioned place and aren't
Hmm.
punching down.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, I feel down to laugh about this and there are funny aspects around it kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. Um, so your special came out this year. What was the impetus for you to do this recording? Obviously, there's a lot of sentimentality of picking the
Yeah.
venue that you recorded at,
Mm-hmm.
but what was the motivation for? Okay, I think I'd like to get this special. And follow up to that is I'm always
Yeah.
interested in as somebody who's recorded a special, are you okay, that material is done and over with.
Ooh, yeah.
I'm only pulling it out, at special occasions,
Mm-hmm.
or is it just, it's part of the ecosystem these days of
Yeah.
comics putting out specials.
Totally, totally. Let's see. Well, to answer the second part first, in terms of like, am I just putting that material behind or moving ahead? I
Mhm.
feel like right now I'm mostly trying to do new stuff, right? Because I'm like, you know what? I feel really good about how the special turned out,
Mhm.
and I feel very proud of like, oh, this is kind of my first 5 years in comedy distilled into a tight half hour that I feel really good about, and the audience
Mhm.
was great, the production was great. um but then also, like I didn't move to I live in New York now. I didn't move to New York that long ago, and there's
Okay.
just so many damn venues here and so many shows that I'm like, you do always, like, if you're going to a new venue or you're going to a new show, like you want to put your best foot forward a little
Mm.
bit. So
Hmm.
there is a bit of the back and forth of like, I want to I want to sandwich my new material with the big hits that I know will work, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of like inching forward in terms of new material while also being like, you know what, especially if it's a new audience and a new spot, like and I want to show off a little bit, right?
Yeah.
I want to do something that I know will work. Um, but then in terms of the location and the impetus for the show, there's a cool story here in that actually the the Denver JCC, the Mizell Arts and Cultural Center, they what had happened is they reached out to me a couple, like, geez, at this point about a couple years ago, where they were like, they, as was the case with so many venues in the arts, were like kind of struggling to get back up on their feet when things
Mm.
opened up
Hmm.
in 2021 and 2022. And one of the things that they wanted to do was they were like, we've always had a lot of programming for kids with the same productions of Seussical and The Hobbit that I
Yeah.
mentioned
Yeah.
earlier. But they were like, we want to have an opportunity to do some programming for adults. We want to teach like a 3 month long stand up comedy class. And basically, the way that they reached out was they were like, how would you feel about a kind of being our like guest comedy coach, where essentially I was in New York and the class was in Denver, but basically I think it was some rhythm of like once every 3 classes or once every 4 classes, I would zoom into the class and give notes to all the students,
Uh-huh.
like joke punch up ideas, that kind of thing, on the 5 minute sets that they were building. And the name of the class was the Tight Five. And so the idea
Hmm.
was that all of these students, which are a really cool group of students, because it literally, like, the ages ranged from 18 up into 70s, right? Like
Wow.
every age you could imagine. Um, and from like every kind of conceivable walk of life and career, they would just like come into the JCC once a week for 3 hours and work on jokes together and work on like telling stories in a way that could get laughs. And so the over the 3 months they were developing their first Tight Five, and then the idea of the show was I was both the MC and the headliner for the show. So I opened up the show, introduced every comic along the way, and then did my half hour at the end of it.
Ah,
And I was like, oh, this is exactly where I need to film this for sure.
yeah.
And it connects to Fairview, to the film, in that like everyone who I'd filmed it with, like my director of photography is one of my dearest friends, Zach Whalen. He's an incredible film guy based in Denver. I He was the first person I reached out to where I was like, hey, you want to help me like film a comedy special when I'm doing this half hour at the JCC? And he was like, absolutely. We put together more of that. We put together pretty much an identical crew to what we used for the short film to film it.
Wow.
Um, and yeah, so that's how all those pieces came together. Really, yeah, it felt so right, and it felt very special for
Yeah.
sure.
Very cool. So you mentioned you've only been doing stand up for 5 years. Is that right?
Well, it was, I guess it
Or
was, I said it was like a culmination of 5 years up until like as this was all coming together. I guess at this point it
okay.
would be more like 7 years at this point. Yeah.
Okay. Still phenomenal to be, doing your a special and you've already been kind of in the comedy world through writing.
Right.
What
Yeah.
prompted you?
I very much feel like a stand-up baby still in many ways, for sure. Yeah.
What was the motivator for the move from LA to New York?
Ooh, a big part of that. A big part of that was first of all, I'm recently engaged.
Yes. Congratulations.
Thank you. Proposed a couple months ago. And we had my fiance Zofia and I had been in a long distance relationship. She lived in New York and I lived in
Ah,
LA. Yeah, we our dear friend Mark Mariello set us up at this point about 5 years ago. When I was gonna come to New York to do some stand-up shows, and to see a show that he put on. And she was in the show that he was in, and he was like, "I'll set you two up." And I think we both thought like, "Oh, this will be a fun week-long fling while
Yeah.
I'm, in New York for the week. And then we were like, uh-oh, we have fallen in love. So so then we were like long distance up until classic Tale as Old as Time, March of 2020. I came for another week-long trip to do some stand-up shows. And then we stayed for 6 months at my mom's house in Queens. And then eventually we were like, I'd want it. New York is a place that has always been like really exciting to me. And the fact that my mom lives here and so many of my friends from college and such live here, I knew I always eventually wanted to, I think, make that move.
Yeah.
And a lot of kind of the comedy dream for me is rooted, I think, also in a lot of like late night shows that are based here, your
Mhm.
Colbert's, your Last Week Tonight's, your daily shows. So that was, yeah, it was kind of the main crux of it was being able to actually live with the person who was my girlfriend, now is my fiance. But like tied together with that was I was like, there's something that's always been so enticing about New York, and
Uh-huh.
I've loved the comedy scene so far. There are ways in which it can feel overwhelming just in terms of, again, just how many places there are to perform, right?
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
can almost feel paralyzing there, but like because there are so many places to perform, like it is very easy to make great comedy friends here
Mhm.
and to kind of build out that community and try out new things. So yeah, very
Yeah.
happy that I moved here. I always love
Well,
visiting LA, but I love
yeah.
being here in New York.
Well, there's one other element to New York that seems like a perfect fit to you if you harken back to your childhood and being kind of the over energized kid. I
Right.
mean, New York matches your energy. If
Yeah. Oh, for
like
sure.
super pumped up about everything, then yeah, New York is kind of where you get
Yeah.
the constant adrenaline rush to match.
Exactly. Yeah. Always something to do. I have found myself after turning 30, I'm like, okay, I get sleepy easier and earlier for sure. No doubt.
Oh,
But
just wait.
yeah, I'll get sleepier and sleepier. I know the progression, right? But yeah, that is something that is so exciting about New York. Yeah, there's always something to do. There is that kind of thrumming energy all the time.
Yeah, yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, for sure. Is there anything that we haven't talked about that you want to make sure you put out into the universe?
Ooh, that's a good question. Let's see. We've touched on a lot. Yeah, Fairview, potential future slogan TBD
Hmm.
production, stand up. Um, this Herschel and the Hanukkah Goblins musical was very fun.
Yeah.
We'll get that back up on its feet. I think perhaps next holiday season. Um, yeah, I mean, I feel like I'm at a fun sort of life crossroads of sorts where in this last year, in addition to releasing the special and then releasing it as an album and a lot of this sort of movement in New York, I also I quit a 6.5 year long video production job that I had,
Oh.
um, which had been initially was a great way to finance this famously very financially stable endeavor that
Yes.
we are all embarking on.
Yeah.
And it was, yeah, it was a cool video production job for a while that then I think in many ways just sort of had taken over my life. And I was like, this is no long, this is, I'm spending all of my time on this video production job and not going to as many shows as I want to, not creating the type of comedy that I want to. And
Yeah.
it had
Yeah.
gotten to a point that it was just unsustainable. So I left, and now I've been kind of in freelance land, piecing together rent. But what's been very exciting about that is there had frankly been a while that I had not been writing new material or creating new material. It had been a lot of like, ooh, let me film things that I've worked on for a while. But now I think I'm kind of at a fun crossroads of like, all right, time to create some new stuff. So I
Mm.
think like I don't exactly know what that will all look like yet.
Yeah.
But I finally kind of have the breathing room to explore it. And so that's all to say. I guess in the spirit of the slogan TBD,
Yeah.
there was much TBD coming up, but I'm very stoked about it. Yeah.
I think the title of this podcast episode is gonna has kind of written itself.
Yes.
Sam
slogan
Clark,
TBD.
TBD.
Yeah, TBD. Yeah. The rest of 2024 and 2025 TBD. We don't know
Yeah.
what it's going to be, but But let's make funny things with friends along the way.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, we were talking before we started recording about, putting together a tour, and I recommended some
Mm,
great venues for you to
yeah.
consider
Yeah. I would
come
love to go to
when you come down
Austin.
to Austin, because there's so much stage time here,
Absolutely.
that there's no shortage of the ability to get you down here. It's just the financing part, I guess.
Yes. Yes. But also, I mean, not too far, or certainly closer than the coast to my hometown of Denver. I love going back to Denver to do shows.
Yeah,
My
yeah,
favorite spot there, Denver Comedy Lounge, is like it's always packed and amazing, and all
yeah,
of the Denver Improv, obviously Comedy Works, etc. there, and
yeah.
just all of the newer shows popping up in uh I don't know, the very Denver thing is breweries and dispensaries, right?
Yep.
There's shows in all of those, and I'm like, I've heard a lot of from folks who've been to Austin. I've heard that a lot of folks have said like it reminds them of Denver in many ways. So
Yeah, yeah.
yes, stay tuned. I will certainly. You'll be one of the first people I let know when I
Yay.
plan a little Denver plus then Austin and other spots
Yeah,
tour. That'd be
yeah.
tremendous. I'd love
I
it.
mean, between Dallas, Austin, San Antonio, Houston, you can
Right.
make a great little arc there of,
Full Texas tour. I would love it.
yep, exactly,
The
exactly.
the last time the last time that I was in Texas was when I was in high school in doing debate nationals. It was so I had I mean honestly the crossover between high school debate tournaments and like comedy festivals is like
Uh-huh.
that Venn diagram is potentially more circular than you might think.
Oh, I've
But
interviewed more than my fair share of former debaters, and
oh yeah,
I'm a former debater,
yeah,
so
right. There you go. Yeah, the high school debater to comedian pipeline is
yeah,
is
very
is
strong.
robust, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, very much so. Very much so. All right. Sam, we're gonna start we are winding down.
We're winding
I
down.
wanted to lead you to my final and closing question.
Ooh.
One word to describe your future.
Ooh, okay, let's see. I said energetic for the past. One word to describe the future. Ooh. I think collaborative.
Oh.
That's something where I'm like, I mean, obviously like stand up by its very nature, just one person with a mic is
Mhm.
is is pretty solo. But I think something that's been very exciting to me about comedy lately has been kind of the community around it, and the type of folks that you can, you're not necessarily gonna like you might collaborate in terms of helping a friend out with a punchline or vice versa. But yeah, I think I'm very excited about seeing what else I can sort of build with other people who I find to be very funny, and very kind, and who I kind of want to create things with. I'm like,
Yeah,
let's see what that might entail.
very cool. And
Yeah.
a lot of debuts were all about collaboration.
Yes,
So
exactly. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, it's very
So
much
yeah,
on brand for Sam.
indeed, indeed. Collaborations TBD, I think is
Yes.
what is coming up. Yeah.
All right. Well, that is a wrap on Comedy Wham presents Sam Clark. Sam, tell us
Ooh.
where we can find you on social media, and let's get a final promo for your projects.
Oh yes. I am on both Instagram and TikTok as at the only Sam Clark. The origin of that was my discovery that there are just so many other Sam Clarks, including for a time there was another like skinny white male stand-up comedian in LA also named Sam
Oh
Clark.
gosh.
I think it was Rachel Wolfson, who has blown up in so many massive, exciting
Yeah.
ways. At one point a few years ago, she messaged me where she was like, I thought I was going to be on a lineup with you, but it was this other Sam Clark, and you
Ah.
need. She was like, you need to claim that mantle. And I'm like, all right, you know what? I am the only Sam Clark. So you can find me there, and yeah. At this point, doing bopping around to sporadic shows in New York, but looking heading into 2025 on hoping to get into touring land a lot more, Austin, Denver, back to LA, etc. and looking to kind of create some hopefully more short films and projects and stuff coming up. Coming up, especially as we're leading up to the election, which of course is filling us all with such anxiety. I'm starting now to kind of like chop up and release a bunch of clips from Fairview to kind of get out there and like, hey, you know, if we're going to be anxious about the election, let's at least laugh about it a little along the way. So yeah, more of that coming up, and hopefully some new exciting projects with old and new collaborators. Yeah.
Is it possible to see Fairview in its full length somewhere?
Ooh, what I will say is I think actually soon have a fun announcement about that. Regarding some of my favorite folks in comedy to have worked with in the past are the amazing folks, Kelsey and Robert at Laugh After Dark. They when I debuted on Amazon Prime a number of years ago, that was Laugh After Dark season 2, where they did such a cool job of really focusing on giving very well produced screen time to up and coming comics who, you know, didn't necessarily have a path towards TV or streaming. And they've done a really cool thing of like, now they've created Laugh After Dark Comedy Fest, this yearly both comedy, stand-up comedy and film festival in Las Vegas, which actually, as we record this podcast, I think that's starting this weekend. But I've been in some talks with them potentially of they're working towards hoping to kind of create a bit of a beta streamer of their own. In terms of the way they discussed it with me, they said they wanted to, you know, there's, especially for short films, it's hard to kind of, once you've done the festival circuit, which is so exciting and so fun, and Laugh After Dark Comedy Fest was our final screening. We won best comedy film there, which was very exciting. They're looking to see like, what if we could kind of create a more direct sort of streamer for like comedy short films. So the hope is coming up soon. We don't know all the details on that, but hoping to find I believe, free online home through Laugh After Dark or elsewhere to kind of be able to let folks just see the film. Okay. So stay tuned on that, I guess.
Fantastic. And of course, Built for Math.
Built for Math, yes, it is on on iTunes plus all the other ones, Spotify, etc. But then also, I'm very, very proud about the visuals, and you can see the theater where I did all of my susicles. That's a fun on YouTube, and many clips on socials as well.
Yeah, it's a great special. Highly recommend.
Oh, thank you so much.
All right. Well, we hope you've enjoyed learning about how Sam got to be the comedic genius that you heard today just as much as I have. This has been Comedy Wham Presents Sam Clark. I'm Valerie, and that's been funny. Thank you so much, Sam.
Thank you so much, Valerie. This was so much fun.